So let's talk about a book that's been at the center of conspiracy theories and pure fascination for well over a century. We're talking about Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. It's this massive, mysterious text, and today we are going to pull back the curtain and see what's really going on.
Okay, let's just get right to it, shall we? This is the quote, the one that gets thrown around all the time. On the surface, wow, it looks like a pretty damning admission, right? It seems to connect Freemasonry directly with something, well, sinister. This one sentence is really the heart of the whole controversy.
So what are we really looking at here? Is this the smoking gun that conspiracy theorists have been pointing to for decades? Or is there something else going on? A bigger, more complicated story? Well, that is the exact question we are here to figure out.
You know, to really get a grip on this book, you have to picture the world it was born into. We're talking about a man named Albert Pike, a former Confederate general, writing this thing right in the middle of the chaos that followed the American Civil War.
Think about it. The world around him, the entire social and political order of the South was in complete ruins. So what does he do? He turns inward. He decides to build a rock-solid philosophical blueprint for the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, something to create a stable moral structure when the outside world had none.
And when I say blueprint, I don't mean some little pamphlet. We're talking about a beast of a book. The original 1871 edition was a whopping 861 pages long. For almost 100 years, this was required reading for new members. Can you just imagine getting that on your first day?
And look, this thing isn't just a random collection of thoughts. It's incredibly structured. It's like a curriculum, you know? It walks you through this very deliberate progression, starting with basic ethics and duty, then moving into the study of different religions, and finally diving deep into some pretty heavy esoteric stuff like Kabbalah and Gnosticism. This was a serious course of study, not some chaotic rant. Okay, so we have this massive, structured book. But here's where things get complicated. The first big controversy is this. Was Pike an author, or was he just a really good copy and paster?
And the craziest part? Pike just owns it. Right there in the preface. He basically says, yeah, I wrote about half of it, and I borrowed the other half from some of the best thinkers out there. I mean, talk about a bold move, especially by today's standards.
So you've got to be asking, why would he do that? Well, in his mind, this wasn't for the public. It was an internal guide. He saw it as a kind of esoteric architecture, weaving together all these different ideas to create one single powerful voice for the Rite. It wasn't until 2011 that a new annotated edition finally went through and gave credit where credit was due, identifying more than 100 different sources he used. Now, even the title itself, Morals and Dogma, trips people up. When we hear dogma, we think of these rigid, unchangeable rules, right? But Pike was super clear about this. For him, it just meant teaching or doctrine. In fact, he explicitly rejected what he called the odious meaning and insisted that members were at perfect liberty to reject and dissent. The whole point was to make you think, not tell you what to think.
Okay, so now that we have all that background, the plagiarism, the meaning of dogma, it's time to go back. Back to that explosive quote about the Luciferian doctrine. Let's finally decode this thing.
And here it is. The entire controversy, the whole big myth, hinges on a misunderstanding of one single word. See, when Pike and other esoteric thinkers used the word Lucifer, they were going back to the original Latin, lux fer. It literally means light bringer. For them, it was a symbol for intellectual light, for reason, for enlightenment. It had absolutely nothing to do with the theological figure of Satan. But wait a second. If Pike never wrote that infamous quote, if he was just talking about enlightenment, then where in the world did it come from? Because I can tell you, it's not anywhere in those 861 pages. The real source? Well, it's one of the most incredible and successful hoaxes in history.
So let me introduce you to a guy named Leo Taxil. This guy was a professional con artist in France. For 12 years straight, he just made stuff up. He invented this whole satanic Masonic cult, created fake quotes out of thin air, and pinned them right on Albert Pike. And the best part? After 12 years of this, he calls a press conference and just admits it. He tells everyone it was all a giant prank to make fun of both Freemasons and the Catholic Church. But by then, it was too late. The lie was way more exciting than the truth.
So after all that, the plagiarism, the fake satanic quotes, what happened to Morals and Dogma? Where does this incredibly complicated book stand today?
Well, for almost 100 years, it was the book, required reading. But then, in 1969, they officially stopped reprinting it. It got replaced in the 70s with something way shorter and easier to read, and then, much later, in 2011, that fully annotated version came out, which basically turned it from a textbook into a historical artifact.
And it's so important to get this right. The reason they replaced it wasn't because of all the Lucifer drama. Nope, it was just practical. I mean, come on, trying to get modern members to read an 861-page book written in super dense 19th century language, it just wasn't working anymore. It was too much of a barrier.
So today, think of it this way. Morals and Dogma isn't the welcome pamphlet anymore. It's the encyclopedia in the library. It's the canonical source, the deep dive document for anyone who's really serious about understanding the philosophy of the Scottish Rite.
And that's really what this whole story leaves us with, isn't it? The tale of this book and this crazy hoax is a perfect example of how a really good lie can stick around, long after it's been exposed. And it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many of the truths we hear every day, the things we just accept, might have started out as someone's deliberate, well-crafted fiction?